The season from hell for Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers continues, and we have some more unfortunate news. I'm going to break down the latest reports from Shams Charania and the Sixers team regarding how the knee issues have popped back to the forefront of Joel Embiid's outlook and why this should probably change our perspective on how soon he will be back on the floor and what this means for the Sixers organization. I'm going to dive into what exactly we know, what this means for the Sixers team, and why there are some hard questions that this team should be asking itself in the mirror. So let's dive right into things here. And do want to start off with the first tweet from Shams Charania here, which states, 76ers Joel Embiid will be reevaluated in 7 to 10 days. He will receive treatment to address swelling in his left knee. And to give the official press release from the Sixers team, it writes, Joel Embiid participated in an on-court workout yesterday after missing the last 6 games due to a left foot sprain. While the foot sprain is healed, Embiid experienced an increase in swelling in his left knee following the workout. After consulting with the team and medical staff and external doctors, Embiid will receive treatment in the coming days to address the swelling. As a result, he'll be out for the upcoming road trip and reevaluated in approximately 7 to 10 days. So this is not something that should come as a huge surprise to a lot of us. We kind of had this weirdness surrounding Joel Embiid's injury status for really the entire season, dating back to him not suiting up for the first 9 games of this year due to quote-unquote ramp-up process and him trying to work himself back into game shape here. And obviously he's missed 6 consecutive games leading into this announcement here. So the injury status with Joel is kind of nothing new, but it does confirm what I think our worst fears are, which is very well, this could be the beginning of the end for what this means for Joel Embiid. There becomes a certain point where with these extensive knee issues and repetitive knee issues where you just don't bounce back, and I think that is unfortunately what we're looking down the barrel of here. For the Joel Embiid is cooked conversations, he is not cooked from a skill set standpoint or his on-court ability, but where he is cooked is in his ability to bounce back, and you can argue that might even be more important for a guy who needs to go through the grind of the NBA season. And even if we just want to talk playoffs, if that is your optimistic lens, that you get one healthy playoff run, which I've certainly talked myself into, that being the direction that the Sixers team needs to go, you still got to play just about every other day in the playoffs there. So not an ideal situation whatsoever, but do want to dive into exactly how he got here. So first I want to start off with my guy, RB Philly Take, who put a little bit of a timeline out for Joel Embiid's overall injury status. I want to start with this. I'm going to dive into the specifics of the most recent knee injury, but what RB tweeted here, and by the way, did an excellent job breaking down his thoughts on this as well. Check that out on his channel at RB Philly Take, but he tweets out, okay, it's officially time for the Sixers to tell us the truth about Joel Embiid. Things do not add up, and boy, is he right about this. Tears his meniscus for the 3rd time on January 31st, 2024. He returns on 4/2/24, just 9 weeks after the knee injury. Plays on one leg through the playoffs. Admits on Drew Hanlen's pod that he couldn't jump in the playoff series versus the Knicks. Then he plays in the Olympics in July. Embiid gets a contract extension despite the reports that the Sixers consulted with numerous doctors and knew he was still injured. He misses the first 9 games of the season due to quote-unquote ramping up. Then the Sixers win 10 out of 13 games, including a huge win on Christmas. Embiid apparently sprains his foot, yet we have no evidence of it other than him tripping in pregame. And I will say, I've seen the video here. I've seen it floated out plenty. I'm sure that he did tweak his foot. I also do more so agree with RB's overall point. So to continue on, Embiid rests versus Sacramento due to rest, and then gets blown out by Golden State the following night. Embiid plays 2 days later, and the Sixers blow out the Nets. Embiid then misses 6 games in a row. Nick Nurse has no updates on his condition, and the Sixers have lost 5 out of 6 since he went out. So a lot going on there, and that's sort of being the wider view here. Now, a couple points that I did want to dig in on. For starters, the contract extension. It's absolutely something that is going to weigh down this franchise, and to dive into exactly what we're discussing here, to look out for these next couple years, that we have this multi-year period, and for Joel Embiid specifically right there at the top, that he's going to be making quite a bit of money all the way up to the 28-29 season, in which he has a $69 million player option. That is a lot of money. And when speaking about this in the full context, one of the goals from Daryl Morey, and that Joel has openly talked about himself, was to create continuity. That too often there's been this revolving door of teammates in the Sixers organization. And when you do look at the teams that win, look at the recent championships, the Boston Celtics, the Denver Nuggets, that these are teams that had to go through battles together. It took a while to get over the edge. It was not you put this team together in one season and all of a sudden they cut down the nets and win the championship. Yes, that happens on occasion, but in the wider scale of what is more likely in the NBA, it is these teams that stick together, that learn how to play with each other, that build chemistry, who go through these tough battles together and build off that. That's what the Sixers are trying to do by putting this core together, that you can see Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Caleb Martin. These are guys that are supposed to be here for multiple years together. And if that is not something you want, you got to kind of deal with that too. So that is the larger point with the contract. As far as the Olympics, I'm never going to be a guy who has an issue with Joel Embiid playing in the Olympics there. That's something that I'm sure was a bucket list moment for him, particularly when you bring in that it took place in France and the backstory and all those kind of things there. I understand that he wanted to do it. Does it look great in the rearview mirror, particularly knowing what we know today and the status of his knee? Absolutely not. But do I fault him for that in its entirety? No, I do not. And if anything, to be honest, I think I can squint and look at that as a positive, is that he was able to play every game in the Olympics that, by our knowledge or what we know out of all the reporting, there were no spark ups of swelling of his knee or anything like that. So I do appreciate that he went and took on that challenge, that he did want to play with the best in the world, share the court with them. And I do think that there are areas that could have helped him in that regard. So I'm not going to hold that against him entirely, even though I know it is frustrating to look back and fair to assess that probably the best thing for Joel was to get that real deal meniscus surgery rather than kind of scraping it away and getting back on the floor last year. That is really where I think this started to go downhill. But to speak on more of the short term, I have a huge issue with this here. This comes from Kyle Neubeck of PHLY Sports. This before the Knicks game on Wednesday, which of course Joel Embiid did not play in. So in the pregame process, and what was particularly strange about this is Embiid was listed as questionable the day before, up until game time, talking about that he's going to go through his warm-up routine, and then they'll decide. He ultimately did not play in that game, but then the next day, ahead of this Knicks game, ruled out fairly early in the day. So sort of the back and forth that I did want to point out starts out with the reporter asking, when did Joel Embiid re-aggravate the foot issue? He played 28 minutes in the Brooklyn game, and we have not seen him since. Do you have an idea? And Nick Nurse says, I don't. I'm assuming it was during the game or after. I don't know exactly the day, but that's what I was told, that he aggravated his foot. Not sure exactly when. Then the reporter asked, you talked at the start of the season about how your season with Kawhi, and Kawhi was an example that you guys perhaps could follow. And they kind of dive into why this is a different situation with Kawhi being way more available than Joel has been this season, has played 13 out of a possible 39 games to this point, and is going to miss the foreseeable future on the road trip here. So Joel is simply not going to reach the 60-plus games that Kawhi did that season. And then the real thing that I have a problem with is this last question here. The reporter says, is there any specific test or anything that Joel has to pass? And Nurse says, not that I know of. They just tell me if he's ready to go or if he's not ready to go. Now, for Nick Nurse specifically, I've been pretty critical of the job that he's done on the court this year and really not having this team up to the standard that I would have. And in fairness to him, he's been dealt about as bad of a possible hand as you could as a head coach. When you talk about your star player being unavailable at the start of the season, I was listening on the broadcast the other day where Nurse was talking to Taryn Hatcher about this is the latest in the season that he's had to run through basic sets as far as where guys should be on out-of-bounds plays and things that are running there. We are halfway through the season and they're still doing this stuff because we've yet to see this entire team play together as designed. At this current point, the Sixers have played 10 total games in which Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid were available. Yes, they're 7-3 in those games, and yes, I believe the organization is going to sell us on the vision of that's enough of a sample size to try to run it back next year. But the reality is, this is tough, man. There's no easy way around this. If Joel is the foundation of all of this, and if you have the foundation of the house that is not laid properly, you can put whatever windows, whatever door, whatever paint color, whatever roof that you want on that house, it's still going to have issues in its foundation there. There's no way to dress that up, and that's kind of the situation that the Sixers are in right now, that this is all designed around Joel Embiid being capable of being the best player on the floor for this Sixers team. If he's not going to be there on a most night basis at this point, that is more often than not that he's going to miss, they simply is not a way where this is a successful franchise moving forward. And what I have a huge issue with is the are issues that have been created over time. That Joel having the amount of voice that he has in this organization as far as when he plays, when he doesn't, when he's available, when he's not, that's stuff that the standard has been set since far before any of these people got here, any of the Daryl Moreys, the Nick Nurse, that Joel has outlived a lot of these, and that's why we're dealing with a lot of the issues that we have. It's tough to change that once that is the standard that is set, and frankly, the damage is kind of done. There's no way to walk back the issues that are going on with this knee. To his credit here, Joel has played through a lot, and I understand it's frustrating, the injury status. It's obviously not ideal that he's dealing with what he's dealing with right now, but I also think it's wrong to just kind of go hard on him and believe this guy's not out there because he doesn't want to be. I don't believe that to be the case at all. What I do believe is that his body has caught up with him. If we're going to be honest and look ourselves in the eye right now, it's kind of incredible that this dude has played at the level he has for as long as he has. Let's not forget that he was flagged for injury concerns coming out of college at Kansas. That's the entire reason that he dropped to the third pick in the draft here, that he was a number one overall talent. There was never a doubt about that, but there were the concerns of, can this guy last in the long haul? Well, we're seeing the effects of that. Now, for this Sixers team specifically, the season goes on. That regardless of Joel Embiid's status, there are still games to be played. And when you look down the standings here, they've dug quite a hole for themselves. So this is very much a crucial point in this year. They got to figure out what is the legitimate chance that Joel Embiid can be healthy at another point. And frankly, I understand the logic or the frustration that drives us to the just shut Joel Embiid down for the season. But my pushback to that is, and then what? Are you more confident that he takes the rest of the year off and then all of a sudden he's back to himself next year? Because I do not believe that will be the case here. I think these are degenerative issues that are going to be there for the remainder of his career for as long as that contract extension lasts. So if that is the case, I kind of think there is a case to be made that you need to do whatever you can to keep into this sort of playoff race. I understand it's not ideal, and frankly, it's fair to assess that maybe the best outlook is to try and tank the season here, but my pushback against that is look at the teams below this Sixers team. The Wizards are 6-33 on the season. The Hornets are 9-28. Raptors 10-31. The Nets 14-27 and getting worse as they are actively trading away guys. The Shake Miltons, the Dorian Finney-Smiths, the Dennis Schroeders, the players that are competent NBA players will not be wearing a Nets jersey following the trade deadline. Cam Johnson, there's not a chance that he survives the trade deadline. He will be sent to another team so they can lose more games. With a team that still holds Tyrese Maxey, still holds Paul George, they're just not going to be worse than that. Like, they're not going to drop below that. And I know we've hammered home this point plenty, but if it is not a top 6 pick, the Sixers simply do not get it. That it turns to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have an embarrassing amount of riches and so much young talent that they don't even know what to do with. You take the 13th man on their roster, and they're a 7th or 6th man on a lot of NBA teams. That's how talented they are. So what do you do as the Sixers? It is a tough answer to that. There's no real world where I see this working out positively for the Sixers team. For this season, I think you got to kind of limp through, let things play out, and figure out where it goes from here. I think I'm kind of against making any sort of notable movement in either direction, to sell the farm, to try and recoup assets by trading away the Kelly Oubres, the Caleb Martin, the guys like that. I get the case for that. But again, what happens next year? Whatever the status is with Joel Embiid should sort of guide you here. But the frustrating part about that is I think they have no clue what the answer to that is. And even like the most recent time that he was ruled out, everything I heard from sort of the buzz internally is that he's expected to play. He was expected to play against the Knicks. That was the organization's stance there. That clearly did not play itself out there. So I don't know what you do if you're the Sixers right now. I'm incredibly frustrated that this is the state of the season. There were such high hopes going into this year, and frankly, this is well below what I thought the floor was for how bad this year could go. But it is what it is. The season continues on, and I'm going to keep rocking with it with you guys. So appreciate each one of you guys for tuning in this video here. Drop your thoughts on if you're in Daryl Morey's shoes. What is your decision-making process from here? Do want to hear from you guys in the comments. As always, make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like if you have not already. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.